Good morning, Dr. Mueller and everyone. Now, I would like to start the presentation. The title is From Polis to Policy, Aristotelian Ethics in U.S. Presidential Education Reform. As a point of departure, it draws on the path to eudaimonia, which offers a critical interpretation of Aristotle's political philosophy. Over the course of this talk, we will examine how U.S. presidents from George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump have shaped education policy. More specifically, we will ask whether these reforms reflect Aristotle's vision of education as a moral and civic endeavor. To begin with, we must first consider Aristotle's foundational view of politics and education. According to Aristotle, politics exists not merely to govern, but to cultivate virtue and guide citizens toward eudaimonia, or human flourishing through ethical living. From his perspective, education is not simply a means of acquiring knowledge or enhancing economic productivity. Rather, it serves to form character and sustain the moral structure of society. In contrast, as we observe from contemporary U.S. education policy, there is a tendency to prioritize technical efficiency and global competitiveness. For this, we need to answer the central question: to what extent do presidential reforms embody Aristotle's ethical? To address this question, we must first explore the philosophical architecture of Aristotle's education vision. As a starting point, Aristotle viewed eudaimonia as the highest human good. In his view, individuals attain this good through virtuous living. In light of this, education must cultivate phronesis, or practical wisdom, and adhere to the principles of mesos, which refers to moderation. Within this framework, the state assumes a central role in shaping virtue and ensuring that citizens are ethically guarded. As both Kierkegaard contends, when morality is separated from politics, the polis loses its ethical coherence and becomes hollow. With these principles in mind, we now turn to the policies of George H.W. Bush to assess this philosophical alignment. In the early 1990s, George H.W. Bush introduced the America 2000 initiative. At its core, this policy set national education goals and promoted school choice. On one level, this reflects Aristotle's idea of a co-oriented polis. However, upon closer examination, it becomes clear that the initiative lacks the ethical depth Aristotle demands. Rather than framing education as a means of character formation, it positioned education as a tool for global competitiveness. From post-Kierkegaard's perspective, political unity without moral guidance remains superficial. In this context, Bush's reforms missed a critical opportunity to legislate for virtue and cultivate ethical citizens. Building on the foundation by his predecessor, George H.W. Bush, President George W. Bush's administration intensified focus on standardization and accountability. During his presidency, George W. Bush enacted the No Child Left Behind Act. At its core, this policy emphasized standardized testing and federal oversight. Although the stated goal was close achievement gaps, the policy relied on rigid metrics and left little room for contextual judgment. This approach stands in direct opposition to Aristotle's concepts of phronesis. Furthermore, the policy lacked moderation and leaned heavily on punitive measures. While equity was a declared objective, the uniform implementation often harmed disadvantaged communities. In light of Aristotle's view of justice, which requires proportionality and attentiveness to context, this model proved ethically inadequate. So, in response to these limitations, on the next slide, we will explore that Barack Obama's administration sought to restore flexibility and local agency. Under Barack Obama rose to the top and the Every Student Succeeds Act introduced broader accountability and state-level legislation. By empowering local actors, these reforms re-engaged policies and allowed for context-sensitive decision-making. In addition, Obama's emphasis on undisturbed schools aligns with Aristotle's principle of distributive justice. Nevertheless, The competitive nature of grant allocation tended to favor wealthier states. Moreover, character education remained marginal, although the reforms gestured toward eudaimonia that lacked the institutional structures necessary to cultivate ethical citizens in a sustained and intentional way. Turning now to Donald Trump's administration, we observe a significant departure from the civic and ethical commitments. During Donald Trump's presidency, the education agenda emphasized school choice, privatization, and deregulation, led by Secretary Betsy DeVos. The administration treated education as a consumer commodity. As a result, the educational landscape became fragmented, and the shared moral commitment essential to Aristotle's Polis were undermined. With minimal federal oversight, the state abandoned its role in legislating for virtue. In addition, the diversion of public funds to private institutions deepened inequality. This violated Aristotle's principle of just distribution. Throughout this period, civic and ethical formation remained conspicuously absent. To conclude, we must synthesize these insights and consider their implication for future reform. In summary, Poskay's interpretation of Aristotle reveals that education must support the moral and civic health of society. Across the administrations of Bush, Obama, and Trump, U.S. education policy has often prioritized technical achievement and individual autonomy. While it has its impressed education as the path to virtue, to realign with Aristotelian ethics, future reforms must place our character information at the center. They must also empower local wisdom, redefine accountability, and treat equity as a moral imperative. Only through such recalibration can education fulfill its highest purpose, forming virtuous citizens within a flourished polis. Thank you for your attention. Now I would like to invite your reflection and questions to consider how these philosophical insights might inform future policy. Thank you again. Goodbye.